Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Wednesday, August 23rd, 2023. Russian mercenary leader Yevgeny Prigozhin, who recently led a failed coup against Russian President Vladimir Putin, is reportedly killed in a small plane crash in Russia. Rudy Guiliani, former personal attorney to former U.S. President Donald Trump, travels to the Fulton County jail in Atlanta, Georgia to turn himself in on racketeering charges related to an alleged plot to change Donald Trump's loss in Georgia in the 2020 presidential election to a victory. The first Republican presidential primary debate is tonight in Milwaukee. 8 candidates scheduled, Donald Trump not one of them by his own choice. We'll hear from a reporter with The Messenger, Tom LoBianco, about what issues may come up during the debate. From 2 candidates who did not qualify for the debate, Hurd and Larry Elder, and from the Democratic National Committee Chair, Jaime Harrison, who held a news conference in Milwaukee today. Plus, civil rights leader Andrew Young on the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. Former acting commissioner of Customs and Border Protection in the Trump administration, Mark Morgan, on the state of U.S. Mexico border security. And the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, celebrates his country's historic achievement of landing a rover on the south pole of the moon. Associated Press reporting from Moscow, a private jet crashed in Russia on Wednesday, killing all 10 people aboard, emergency officials said. Mercenary chief Yevgeny Prigozhin was on the passenger list. His fate has been the subject of intense speculation ever since he mounted a short-lived mutiny against Russia's military leadership in late June. The Kremlin said the founder of the Wagner private military company, which fought alongside Russia's regular army in Ukraine, would be exiled to Belarus. But the mercenary chief has since reportedly popped up in Russia, leading to further questions about his future. That from AP. Reporters asked President Biden about this as he and his family vacationed in Lake Tahoe.
Again, what the Prigozhin family did, you may recall, when I was asked about this by you, I said I'd be careful what I turn to what I wrote in. I don't know for a fact what happened, but I'm not surprised.
Do you believe?
There's not much that happens when Russia is not behind, but I don't know enough to know the answer. I've been working out for the last hour and a half.
Will you watch the debates later?
I'm going to try to see get as much as I can, yes.
What's your expectation in terms of the
I have not. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
President Biden speaking with reporters at his vacation spot in Lake Tahoe. He's on the Nevada side of the lake that straddles Nevada and California. A little tough to hear the answers. He said, you may recall when I was asked about this by you, I said I'd be careful what I wrote in, referring to Prigozhin. He said, I don't know for a fact what happened, but I'm not surprised. There's not much that happens in Russia that Putin's not behind, but I don't know enough to know the answer. I've been working out for the last hour and a half. National Security Council spokesperson Adrian Watson posting as the first news of Prigozhin's death came across. We have seen the reports. If confirmed, no one should be surprised. And the Russian news site TASS reports that Russia's Federal Air Transport Agency said the plane that went down was flying from Moscow to St. Petersburg, and that an investigation has been launched into the cause. From NBC News, Rudy Guiliani, Donald Trump's personal lawyer who championed the former president's bogus election fraud claims, turned himself into authorities in Georgia on Wednesday to face racketeering charges, alleging he meddled in the state's 2020 presidential election. Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump both face 13 counts, more than the other 17 defendants in the case. The former New York City mayor has maintained his innocence and claimed the only thing he's guilty of was zealously advocating for his client. That was from NBC News. Rudy Giuliani spoke to reporters outside his apartment in New York City before he went down to Georgia.
Yeah, I got a minute, and that's it. I got to make an airplane. How are we feeling today? And if I'm not on, how are you? If I'm not on time, who knows what they'll do to me in the Bidenista state. Well, I'm going to Georgia, and I'm feeling very, very good about it because I feel like I'm defending the rights of all Americans, as I did so many times as a United States attorney. People like to say I'm different. I'm the same Rudy Giuliani that took down the mafia, that made New York City the safest city in America, reduced crime more than any mayor in the history of any city, anywhere. And I'm fighting for justice. I have been from the first moment. I represented Donald Trump, an innocent man, who has now been proven innocent several times. I don't know how many times he has to be proven innocent, and they have to be proven to be liars, actually enemies of our republic, who are destroying rights, sacred rights. They're destroying my right to counsel, my right to be a lawyer. They're destroying his right to counsel. It's not accidental that they've indicted all his lawyers. Never heard of that before. In America, all the lawyers indicted. Now, whether you dislike or you like Donald Trump, let me give you a warning. They're going to come for you. When the political winds shift, as they always do, let us pray that Republicans are more honest, more trustworthy, and more American than these people in charge of this government. Because if our government is conducted this way, and the system of justice is politicized and criminalized for politics, your rights are in jeopardy and your children's. Donald Trump told you this. They weren't just coming for him or me. Now they've indicted people in this case. I don't even know who they are.
Rudy Giuliani, former personal attorney to former President Donald Trump, speaking with reporters outside his apartment building in New York City before flying to Atlanta to turn himself in at the Fulton County Jail for processing in that case alleging a scheme to fraudulently reverse Joe Biden's victory over Donald Trump in Georgia in the 2020 presidential election. Rudy Giuliani was released on a $150,000 bond and must follow rules that are similar to the co-defendants in this case, including not talking about the case with the co-defendants or witnesses except through counsel. He mentioned that the lawyers being indicted, several more of the 19 total defendants surrendering today, including lawyers Jenna Ellis and Sidney Powell. Also, David Schaefer, former chair of the Georgia Republican Party, who made his processing photo, his mugshot, his profile photo on the social media platform X, formerly Twitter. Story from Politico. Former President Donald Trump's shadow is already looming over the first Republican presidential debate Wednesday, but Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel wants the night to be about issues, not the elephant in the room. She told Politico in an interview on the eve of the most highly anticipated event of the campaign so far, "I really do hope that it's a policy-driven debate and that these candidates have a chance to show who they are and what they stand for on huge issues that are facing our country." The Political article continues. The stage for Wednesday's debate in Milwaukee is set. 8 candidates met the RNC's strict requirements to earn a podium, though Donald Trump, the current frontrunner, has said he won't show up. C-SPAN spoke with national political reporter for The Messenger, Tom LoBianco, about what issues, besides Donald Trump's legal troubles, might come up in tonight's Republican presidential primary debate.
What do you think are going to be the big issues talked about tonight, besides Trump's legal problems?
For sure. Chris Christie, we know because it's Chris Christie and he told us, will be hitting pretty much everybody. But he will be going after Trump. I mean, one thing that's kind of a unifier here on the stage among the candidates who are not named Trump is a general belief that Trump cannot win a general election against Joe Biden. Now, if you're Vivek Ramaswamy, you're coming at this from the populist right. If you're Nikki Haley, Haley launched her campaign. She was the second major player to launch her campaign way back in February, I believe. It's all an argument about winning an election. And, some of this is a continuance of losing big in the 2022 midterms. And Trump got blamed for a lot of that. A lot of his hand-picked candidates ended up losing very winnable races. That's going to be the unifying thing. Now, to the extent you kind of have two primaries going on right here. You kind of have a Trump in one lane, all to himself. And then you have everybody else on the debate stage kind of fighting over this other 55, 60% of the Republican voter base. And they're going to be fighting each other over lanes. Mike Pence versus Tim Scott for evangelical support. That's going to be a big one. Tim Scott, Nikki Haley, Chris Christie, Mike Pence, sort of the adult in the room, so to say, that world. And what you're going to see is they're going to try to time their punches against each other to make plays to those different voter bases. Ukraine will be a big wedge issue. You're going to have, it's not as big a faction in the Republican Party as it used to be under Reagan, clearly, and Bush. But you're going to have some national security hawks up there. Pence, Christie, talking about support for Ukraine. Haley, China, fighting communist China will be a big unifier on stage. And I think you're going to see, one big test here, and this happens in every campaign, when you have a fresh face who's rising in the polls. This is Vivek Ramaswamy. Look for him to get challenged a lot on his answers. He stumbled a good bit over how to handle China. I think his most recent answer was you give away Taiwan after getting a semiconductor manufacturers back in America. And that's not a new debate. He's got some new spin on the messaging around it. But, in terms of onshoring manufacturing, that is a long debate that has been going on inside the United States. So look for people like Christie in particular to, hit him, say, how do you do that? Push him past the talking points. The thing for Pence, and Pence is in a really tough spot here. He has to talk about January 6th. It is, he is in the middle of the January 6th indictment. He could potentially be a witness on the stand against Trump, depending upon when it goes to trial. And Trump is not on stage, but when you talk with people, with other Republicans about this, Pence is as much running for president as he is running for the history books.
Tom LoBianco, national political reporter for The Messenger, on C-SPAN's Washington Journal program this morning. You can find the full discussion with him archived at cspan.org. And again, those 8 Republican presidential candidates qualifying for tonight's debate in Milwaukee: Ron DeSantis, Vivek Ramaswamy, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, Chris Christie, Mike Pence, Doug Burgum, and Asa Hutchinson. And as mentioned, Donald Trump will not be there. Former Fox News host Tucker Carlson, who now broadcasts on X, formerly Twitter, posting a short video today promoting an interview that he pre-taped with Donald Trump, and it's scheduled to air at the same time as tonight's debate.
On Sunday, Donald Trump announced that he will not participate in tonight's Republican candidates debate, hosted by Fox News in Milwaukee. Whatever you think of Trump, he is, as of tonight, the indisputable far and away frontrunner in the Republican race. We think voters have an interest in hearing what he thinks. So when Trump approached us about having a conversation for a far larger audience than he'd receive on cable news, we happily accepted. That interview will air tonight in this space at 8:55. We hope you'll watch.
Tucker Carlson with that video. North Dakota Governor and Republican presidential candidate Doug Burgum suffered a high-grade tear of his Achilles tendon while playing a game of pickup basketball with his staff, reports CNN. Doug Burgum posting, "I played lots of pickup games in my day. This isn't the first one. Has sent me to the ER. Appreciate all the well wishes. Hashtag Team Burgum." During a walkthrough of tonight's debate, he was on crutches. He spoke with NBC reporter Ali Vitale, saying he will be there tonight.
Can you stand for 2 hours?
Well, there's one thing we'll find out, but I just did the walkthrough. They've got strong podiums, and they've got them bolted to the floor, so hopefully that'll provide the support I need. If I have to stand on one leg for 2 hours to fulfill this mission of improving every American life, I'm happy to do it. There's all kinds of people that make bigger sacrifices than that.
So you're either standing or you're not debating?
Exactly.
Part of the interview with Ali Vitale and candidate Doug Burgum, North Dakota governor, who will be at tonight's debate. 4 declared Republican presidential candidates did not qualify for the debate tonight under the standards requirements of the Republican National Committee: Larry Elder, Perry Johnson, Will Hurd, and Francis Suarez. Will Hurd, a former Republican congressman from Texas, was interviewed today by Forbes.
There was 8 national polls, 8 state polls where, our assessment, we met the requirements. And unfortunately, details like some of these pollsters that are well-known pollsters didn't know that their poll was going to not be used as a qualifying poll. For instance, in Iowa, there was only one poll that met those standards. And one of the groups that was not included is probably the gold standard of polling in Iowa. There was another poll that had about 1,200 people in it, and we were told there were too many Democrats and independents that wanted to vote for me, and that wasn't going to be included, which is crazy to me. I thought that the whole point of this was to grow the party, and we should be applauding growing the party and having Democrats and independents being excited. Like, if you talk about a likely voter, a likely Republican voter is someone who's willing to vote for a Republican. And so, look, this is the process. The RNC decided to cherry pick things. We're moving on. We're driving on. The debate is not a necessary requirement within winning the presidential election. And so we're taking we'll continue to take our message to the streets. It's working. In New Hampshire, I'm tied with Nikki Haley and Mike Pence, both people that have significantly higher name ID than I. I've spent significantly more money. We've hit the 40,000 threshold for donors sooner than most people. We're on way to go to 50,000. So if your viewers want to help us out, go to hurdforamerica.com and they can donate at least $1 to help us out on this. And so we're moving on, and I wish everybody else on the stage luck.
Republican presidential candidate Will Hurd in a Forbes interview today. Another candidate who did not qualify for tonight's RNC debate, radio talk show host Larry Elder, was interviewed by Glenn Beck, another radio host and Blaze Media co-founder.
Are you in Milwaukee?
Of course I'm in Milwaukee, and I'm going to be on that debate stage. I predict it. I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I would bet my house Larry Elder is going to be up there on that debate stage in some 12 hours from now.
Oh, I hope you are right, Larry. I hope you are on stage. What is the message that you think needs to be there tonight?
Well, regarding the reason they're keeping me out, Glenn, I've met the 40,000 individual donor criterion. I've met in fact, I've got to have 200 donors from 20 different states. I've exceeded that. The problem is the last one, which is I've got to have 3 national polls where Elder is at least 1% among Republican and Republican-leaning voters. I submitted 3. As I pointed out in that little video, they rejected one, the Rasmussen poll. And they told me that it was, quote, affiliated with Donald Trump, close quote, whatever the hell that means. And I said, well, it's not affiliated with me. And they said any poll affiliated with any candidate is not usable. I said the same Rasmussen that you quote all the time on your Twitter feed, the same Rasmussen that was the most accurate in 2016, and they said yes. And then after that, Glenn, we turned in another one where I'm above 1%. So we turned in 4. The last one was turned in after the deadline, but I didn't realize they were going to reject one of the ones that I turned in. So as far as I'm concerned, all the criteria have been met. Moreover, my lawyer is the former chair of the Federal Elections Commission. They 25 years ago put down the rule that sets forth the debate criteria. And they say that the RNC or DNC can set forth their own criteria. Once you do it, you have to follow it and apply it fairly to every single candidate. So they're applying it to 8 of them who are going to be up there, not Larry Elder, which means, in my lawyer's view, they're giving them an in-kind contribution of 120 minutes of free airtime. And if you look at the cost of airtime on Fox News, multiply it times 8, that means that the RNC could be facing, Glenn, a fine of up to $100 million for giving an in-kind contribution. And Fox News could also face a fine of $100 million by the FEC for giving an in-kind contribution.
Republican presidential candidate Larry Elder on the Glenn Beck radio show today. The RNC chair, Ronna McDaniel, said in her interview with Politico about the debate qualifications and the 4 candidates who did not make it, Larry Elder, Perry Johnson, Will Hurd, and Francis Suarez, we put forth metrics that we felt would create good polling. I don't think many people woke up today surprised that these 4 candidates didn't make the stage, and I hope they do well. But you've got to say, well, maybe I shouldn't have gotten in as late as I did. Maybe I should have gotten in earlier. I would have had a longer runway to get the polling that I needed. I mean, it's not easy when you have 0 name ID to get 1% in 3 national polls. That quote from the Republican National Committee chair, Ronna McDaniel, in a Politico interview. The Democratic National Committee also has a presence today in the RNC debate city of Milwaukee. The DNC chair, Jaime Harrison, said at a news conference that none of the 8 Republican debate participants and the one candidate not taking part, Donald Trump, should be president.
You know, for the past several months, we've seen the 2024 MAGA Republican field crisscross the country. And they have been running a race, folks, a race to the bottom to secure this Republican nomination for president. And tonight in prime time, Americans will have an opportunity to see in action the most extreme, the most divisive, the most chaotic slate of presidential candidates in history when these MAGA 2024 Republicans take the debate stage here in Milwaukee. And I don't know if it's going to be a debate, but more like a circus. You know, they may try to differentiate themselves, but the truth is that every single one of these candidates, from Donald Trump on down, are extreme. They want to put our economic recovery in reverse and raise costs on working families. They want to give tax handouts to corporations and the ultra-wealthy while slashing Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. They want to erase the progress that we've made in the fight against climate change, even as millions of Americans suffer more frequent and more severe weather events. They want to erase our history and teach our children that slaves benefited from slavery. And they want to take away our freedoms and push a nationwide ban on abortion, even as voters have repeatedly made it clear in red states, in blue states, in purple states, that we're not interested in their anti-women, anti-choice agenda. That's what they stand for. And now here's who they are. We have Ron DeSantis. As we say in the South, bless his heart. This guy has pushed an extreme MAGA agenda focused on taking away Floridians' freedoms instead of focusing on the high costs that are crushing Florida families. We have Tim Scott. I know him well. Proud Tea Party Republican who has promised to govern from, and I quote, the far conservative right. We have Nikki Haley, who I know even better, who as governor signed into law an extreme abortion ban that had no exceptions for rape or incest. We have Mike Pence, who is still Trump's MAGA wingman and was the first candidate to call for banning abortion nationwide. We have Vivek Ramaswamy, who is so desperate to be Donald Trump 2.0 that he's running around spreading conspiracy theories about 9/11 and threatening to change the voting age from 18 to 25. We have Doug Burgum, who has signed some of the most extreme MAGA legislation into law in North Dakota and is trying to buy his way into the Oval Office. And we cannot forget good old Chris Christie, who has suddenly forgotten the fact that he campaigned for Donald Trump in 2020 and is every bit as MAGA as the rest. So let me sum this up for you all. No matter who you pick, this group is as extreme as it gets. A bag full of MAGA apples, and they are all rotten.
Jaime Harrison is chair of the DNC, Democratic National Committee, holding a news conference today in Milwaukee ahead of tonight's first Republican presidential primary debate in that city. A CBS News background article on the Republican debate also has a paragraph that begins with the question, will the Democrats be holding debates? And the answer, the Democrats are currently not planning to hold any debates. No incumbent president has participated in a party debate since Gerald Ford in 1976. Gerald Ford was the only person to become president without having won a general election for the presidency or vice presidency. And that article continues. President Biden is currently being challenged by two Democrats, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Marianne Williamson, neither of whom have ever held elected office or are considered serious challengers. Again, that reporting from CBS News. That article also has that the debate is taking place in Milwaukee, the largest city in Wisconsin, a critical battleground state that Donald Trump flipped in 2016, but President Biden flipped back in 2020. And also the 2024 Republican National Convention will be held in Milwaukee. Well, the mayor of Milwaukee, Cavalier Johnson, a Democrat, held a news conference this morning about his city's hosting Republican primary debate tonight and the RNC convention next summer. Plus, he had a message for any potential protesters today.
To be clear, while I'm a gracious host, my political views do not align with the positions that you'll hear tonight on stage at the Republican debate. I am a gracious host for entirely different reasons. I want Milwaukee to be seen in the best possible light. The best possible light across the state of Wisconsin, the best possible light across the United States, the best possible light across the world. And I want more events, I want more conventions, I want more big meetings to take place in Milwaukee as well. And most importantly, I want the jobs. I want the spending. I want the positive impact on our economy that comes from a thriving convention and hospitality industry. In advance of the event tonight, I want to share several points about our preparations. First, there will be some limited road closures. So the roads immediately surrounding Pfizer Forum will be closed to traffic, and that'll begin this afternoon. So there are alternate routes, so I don't expect there to be many traffic tie-ups. I do have a greater concern, though, about the heat that's predicted today. We're likely to see some of the hottest temperatures we've seen all summer long today, so I want folks to take some precautions there. I want to let folks know that there's more information that's available on the heat and the city's website by going to milwaukee.gov/hot weather safety. Again, the City of Milwaukee's Health Department's website, milwaukee.gov/hot weather safety. Many people have asked about protests that have been planned for today as well. And I welcome orderly expressions of political views, and I want any protests that may happen in Milwaukee to be safe. That being said, the Milwaukee police are monitoring and preparing for demonstrations, and I have confidence in the plans that the Milwaukee Police Department has laid out. While I hope that no arrests will be made if individuals make the choice, if they choose to break the law, then they will be taken into custody. Let me repeat that again. The Milwaukee Police has plans for protests. We want them to be orderly. That is welcome in Milwaukee. You can express yourself, have your First Amendment rights, show that you are displeased with a candidate or their opinions, but those things must be orderly. We do not expect, will not condone any destruction of property or any harm to people. If you do, there will be arrests that are made. I want that to be very, very clear to folks who are out there.
Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson at a news conference today. Milwaukee Journal Sentinel article reads that about the RNC convention that the city will be holding next summer. This is a huge win for Milwaukee. Next year's 2024 Republican National Convention is expected to bring in approximately $200 million and 45,000 people to our beautiful city in July. Washington Today continues in a moment.
When citizens are truly informed, our republic thrives. Get informed straight from the source on C-SPAN. Unfiltered, unbiased, word for word. From the nation's capital to wherever you are. Because the opinion that matters the most is your own. This is what democracy looks like. C-SPAN, powered by cable.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast wherever you find your podcasts and on the C-SPAN Now mobile app. This coming Monday, August 28th, is the 60th anniversary of the 1963 March on Washington, where the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave his I Have a Dream speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial to a crowd of 250,000 people. Today, civil rights leader Andrew Young, who worked with Dr. King, did an interview with the chair of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, Charlotte Burroughs.
When my grandchildren give me hell about things are no better now than they were when you were growing up, I want to slap the black off them. And I tell them, I said, you don't know. I said, there were 60 bombings in Birmingham, 150 miles away. It never got in the Atlanta papers. We didn't know about Shuttlesworth's church until he came over to tell us himself. And so the difference is that when George Floyd was killed, it was shown live all the way around the world to New Zealand. And people responded en masse. And amazingly, we did fairly well. The only other emotional thing like that to me was the presence of a little naked girl on the cover of Life magazine in Vietnam, having had her clothes napalmed off of her. And that picture ended the Vietnam War, maybe. George Floyd woke up the banks and the financial institutions, but it also scared the hell out of a lot of people in politics. And I don't fully understand that, because everything that's happened for minorities white people are still doing much better. More white people profited by my being mayor than black people. And there's no way it could have been any difference. And so we are looking for equal opportunity. But this equal pay for equal work and, numbers games, I mean, Dr. King used to say, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. We look at the statistics and we still seem like we're way behind. But when I go to a restaurant in Atlanta, I have not been to an expensive restaurant with some of my rich friends that I can't afford. And it has not been filled at least half with black people. And so we're having the best of worlds, and we still have some of the worst worlds. Now, you can worry about tomorrow night. I celebrate tomorrow night.
Andrew Young, civil rights leader, former mayor of Atlanta, former congressman from Georgia, and former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. In an interview today with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission chair ahead of Monday's 60th anniversary of the 1963 March on Washington. And this coming Saturday, from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern, C-SPAN's American History TV will take a look at the civil rights movement in 1963, 5 hours of programming on the 60th anniversary of the 1963 March on Washington. An NBC News story about the U.S. Mexico border. Biden administration officials say their new immigration policies have discouraged many migrants from trying to cross the border since the COVID ban known as Title 42 ended in May. But an NBC News review of border crossing data shows that the Department of Homeland Security is also expelling fewer migrants per day back to Mexico than it was in the last full month before the end of Title 42. On average, about 1,000 migrants have been sent back across the border into Mexico since Title 42 ended May 11th, compared to the nearly 3,000 a day in April. As a proportion of total border crossers, about 14% of undocumented migrants caught crossing into the U.S. each day in July were sent back into Mexico, down from a daily average of 32% in April. That was from NBC News. Mark Morgan is a former acting commissioner of Customs and Border Protection in the Trump administration. Today he talked about the U.S.-Mexico border at a program hosted by the Center for Immigration Studies.
We're on pace under the first full term of this administration. If we keep going at this pace, and there's nothing indicated that's going to slow down, we're looking at 13 million total nationwide encounters plus total gotaways in the first term of this president. That would make it equivalent to the 5th largest populated state in this country, just under New York. So no, the numbers aren't going down. That's a lie. And there's no one, if you're intellectually honest, can stand here after seeing the border, hearing those numbers, and tell us that our borders are secure and we have operational control. It's a lie. You ask what has changed, Mark? A lot has changed. First of all, it started with Biden campaign. How he said he was going to stop building the wall. He was going to open the border. Remember during the presidential Democratic campaign, they were almost elbowing each other out of the way to raise their hands when the question was asked, will you give free medical care to illegal aliens? Everybody on stage raised their hand, including candidate Biden. But let's talk about specifics. What are the plethora of the network of tools, authorities, and policies that they dismantled? We don't have enough time right now for me to get into all that, but I'm going to hit the highlights. The asylum and cooperative agreements that we had with all 3 Northern Triangle countries, that really, first and foremost, it was designed to give those true asylum seekers relief in the first transit country they got to, and it eliminated foreign shopping. Biden administration eliminated that. The Migrant Protection Protocol, the Remain in Mexico program, that acted as an effective deterrence program. That policy single-handedly reduced illegal immigration by over 85% within a few months of its implementation. The Biden administration dismantled it. Catch and release. We had all but ended catch and release, because make no mistake, the migrants coming to our border right now, they're not looking for asylum. They're looking to be part of the asylum process, which is going to release them under this administration. We had all but ended the catch and release. The Biden administration reinstated catch and release. We leveraged Mexico through strength and power of the United States to get them to step up to join us in the global issue that it is. At one point, when I was commissioner, they had over 25,000 personnel, not only securing their southern border, but also increasing interior enforcement. On day one of the Biden administration, that leverage went away. Interior enforcement, why we've had the highest levels of illegal immigration encounters in our nation's history. We've also had the lowest number of deportations since ICE was created in 2003. The interior enforcement restrictions placed on the incredible men and women of ICE. Basically, you have to be a known or suspected terrorist or convicted criminal before you are a priority. We are literally having illegal aliens that have also committed a secondary crime in the United States being released back in the communities because of this administration. Their refusal to enforce the law. Secretary Mayorkas, he's viewed the law as a mere advisory opinion. He's abandoned his oath. He's abdicated his responsibility, refuses to enforce the law. This is the secretary that said being in our country illegally by itself is not enough to remove you. Well, I object to that because the law says otherwise. So look, I could keep going on. Those are just some of the highlights. So they have destroyed every element of a strong deterrence to deter those illegally entering the country and applying consequences to those that do and break our law, and put integrity back in the system by reducing the number of illegal alien false claims.
Mark Morgan is former acting commissioner for CBP, Customs and Border Protection. He's also served as acting ICE commissioner, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and Border Patrol chief in his career. Today he was on Capitol Hill in Washington at a program held by CIS, Center for Immigration Studies. An article at rollcall.com reads that the Biden administration will defend a key migration program in a Texas federal court starting this week in a case that could upend operations at the border and curb the executive branch's immigration authorities. A bench trial set to begin Thursday will focus on a program rolled out in January that allows tens of thousands of migrants from Nicaragua, Cuba, Venezuela, and Haiti with willing American sponsors to come to the U.S. legally under an immigration authority known as parole. Wall Street today, the Dow up 184, NASDAQ up 215, S&P up 48. India, writes Associated Press, became the first country to land a spacecraft near the moon's south pole on Wednesday, a historic voyage to uncharted territory that scientists believe could hold vital reserves of frozen water, and a technological triumph for the world's most populous nation. That from AP. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi watched the moon landing from South Africa, where he's attending a summit with leaders of the BRICS nations. That's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And then he spoke to his country and the world.
India's successful moon mission is not just India's alone. This is a year in which the world is witnessing India's G20 presidency. Our approach of one earth, one family, one future is resonating across the globe. This human-centric approach that we present and that we represent has been welcomed universally. Our moon mission is also based on the same human-centric approach. Therefore, this success belongs to all of humanity, and it will help moon missions by other countries in the future. I am confident that all countries in the world, including those from the global south, are capable of achieving such feats. We can all aspire for the moon and beyond.
The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaking from South Africa and talking about his country becoming the first to land a moon rover on the south pole of the moon, where some scientists believe there's frozen water, which could be used for fuel, oxygen, and drinking water for future missions. And India now becoming the fourth country to land any rover on the moon. The others are the U.S., Russia, and China. Thanks for joining us on Washington Today. To get the stories making news in Washington emailed to you every day, subscribe to our evening newsletter, word for word, at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night.